It's finally here. Now, I have been looking so forward to this movie ever since it was announced. I had never read the comic at the time, but I was well aware that it was loved by fans, and that it explained Joker's origin story and the reasoning for how Batgirl became Oracle. Also, the fact that both Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill would be reprising their roles as the Dark Knight and the Clown Prince of Crime only sealed a deal for me. So from the very first shot of the movie, I was gobsmacked. The animation from just the opening shot of Gotham City is so beautifully drawn and is definitely one of the best representations of Gotham I have ever seen in animation. We are then following Batgirl in her own story as she tries to pursue a mob gang. Now I know what you're thinking, this was not in the comic book. Well, there is a good reason for that. Producer Bruce Timm, who was behind the animated series, said that the comic book of The Killing Joke would not equate to an hour and 15-minute movie. As a result, they had to add an original story, in this case a prequel, to fill in the remaining time. So the story in question revolves around Batgirl and Batman pursuing a mob gang, and the leader is just your average criminal, who is one of the most psychological villains I have ever seen. I mean, this guy is really screwed up and is one of the many reasons this film turns into a psychological thriller. That's a first for an animated Batman film, and it was very effective. Overall, Batgirl's story arc was done extremely well. Not only does it complement Alan Moore's original story, it feels like this is the prequel he would have wrote. So the writers of this film really deserve props for that. There is one devastating issue the writers did with this film though, and it is a major, insulting problem. But it requires me to delve into spoilers, so I will talk about it at the end of the review. Now, 31 minutes in, the actual Killing Joke story begins, and it is so nice to see the pages come to life with the incredible animation. That's another thing, in the trailers the animation looks really flat and underwhelming. In the finished movie though, it looks great. The main reason it works is because it amplifies the insanely realistic, violent and disturbing theme this movie is trying to relay. Speaking of which, let's talk about Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill as Batman and Joker. Whenever these two are performing in the cartoons and games, it doesn't matter what the tone is, you never get scared of them. So I thought the exact same thing would happen in this film. Boy was I wrong. Because not only is Joker terrifying, but the last time I felt this was with Heath Ledger's Joker, and that was 8 years ago. In this movie, he is so unpredictable and he doesn't hold back. Practically every person he encounters, he tries to kill and leave them in a laughing state, and is some of the most disturbing shit you will see. For the first time, I was less excited about Mark Hamill's performance and was more frightened. And I've heard him do this voice since I was 5 years old. It really is impressive how an actor can take a performance we've become accustomed to for years, yet can still somehow find a way to frighten us with it. 24 years later. Really, Mark Hamill did an impeccable job, and the music makes his performance as well as the tone of the entire movie so much more disturbing. I don't remember a soundtrack being so understated yet this effective since The Dark Knight. And as you know, that's my all-time favourite movie, so for me to even make a comparison like that really is saying something. Now it's time to move on to Kevin Conroy as Batman. Now I'm not sure if you guys noticed this about his Batman performances, but if you look at all his animated movies, you realise his voice is very soft.
Alfred, get the Batwing ready. The Justice League is under attack.
By whom?
By me!
Whereas in the Arkham games,
Instead of searching for the toxin, what if we focus on the manufacturing process?
it's a lot more stern. I personally prefer his more stern voice in the Arkham games, and as per usual in the animated movies, I thought his voice would be more soft. But again, I was wrong. Much like Mark Hamill, this is one of Kevin Conroy's most impeccable and crisp performances he has ever delivered. And quite surprisingly, it's far more stern than his delivery in the Arkham games, which I never thought he would be able to surpass. When he verbally strikes fear into the hearts of his enemies, you really feel it more than usual. Again, much like Mark Hamill, he takes his role that he's been doing for 24 years and he takes it to the next level and succeeds with flying, dark colours. And scenes involving the two are incredibly intense. Not to mention, this film as well as the comic are very dialogue heavy. People used to criticize Nolan's Batman films for having a lot of dialogue, but in actuality, some of the best comics and stories like this are filled with it just as much. Regardless, the scenes with both Batman and Joker are some of the darkest confrontations you will see. All the characters along with the music make for a really dark, depressing, disturbing and psychological thriller that almost feels like a horror movie at times. It definitely earns its R rating. No one under the age of 15 should see this. Okay, so I've talked about a lot of the things this movie does right, now it's time to talk about the bad aspects. First I will elaborate on the smaller problems, and then the big frickin' problem that actually pisses me off the more I think of it. First off, Barbara has this gay friend, acquaintance, or whoever the hell he is, who keeps asking her about her love life, and persists on asking her when she's gonna pick someone from the litter. I would be alright with it if it was just one scene, but this happens about 3 to 4 times throughout the entire hour-long movie. The reason it bothers me so much is because you figure out this is just blatant exposition for Barbara, but they present it in a high school drama kind of way. It came across as lazy, and I hated every second of it. Another scene involves Gordon. Without giving away much spoilers, he goes through something really traumatic that by instinct he actually hugs Batman. The only words that come out of his mouth though are, "Oh God. Oh God." Whereas I thought the scene would be much more effective if he broke out crying. That would have been the natural human response to what he was going through, and it would have given the movie more emotional weight, as that's something this film lacks. Also, I didn't like the way it ended. Now in the comic it's probably more fitting to end the way it did, but it doesn't translate well to film. Alright, now it's time to move on to the big problem with the movie, and this is going to be the spoiler part of the review. Okay, the worst part of this movie is that Batgirl has lustful feelings towards Batman. That's right, the person who in the vast majority of storylines is considered to be her father figure, she has lust towards him and talks about him with pure infatuation. And through completely forced circumstances, they both end up having sex. Now this is wrong on so many levels. First of all, Batman is a father figure to Robin, Nightwing, and Batgirl. They are all much younger than him, and hence he has played a part in raising them over the years, and he views them as his own children. He shows concern for them, and even though he won't say it, if anything would happen to them, he feels like he loses a part of himself to the darkness and is one step closer to being the very people he puts away. And that is a very strong sentiment he has, and it's a relationship that is so deep and has layers and layers of character development. And in all this darkness they go through, it's really quite touching. This movie, however, says, sod that. The reason he cares for her well-being is because, she's my love interest. That's why I'm so concerned. Why did they change it? It was an essential element to the Batman lore and comics. It has been for years, and it's so perfect. But this movie just reduces all that to the lowest common denominator. It's also a disservice to the character of Batman because he would not allow himself to do something like this. Also, it shows Barbara in a different light. It turns this great character into a horny kid who contemplates disgusting sexual thoughts with her father figure who played a part in raising her. Not to mention, she is the one that makes the first move and then Batman just allows it. She is supposed to be in a relationship with Nightwing at this point, and the comic created by Alan Moore gave that vibe. It did not once imply that her and Batman were love interests. Seriously, writers, what happened? For years, you have done an amazing job representing them, but this just completely contradicts everything these characters stand for. Even Barbara later says that it didn't mean anything, so why the hell did you write it in? I'm not the only one who thinks this too. This is something that many people think is really frickin' screwed up. Bruce Timm is the only one who responded to it in an appropriate fashion, but his explanation doesn't hold any water. I had faith in these guys to do justice to these characters as they have for over 2 decades, but instead, they took the nonsensical perverted angle. We live in an over-sexualized time where apparently fanfictions have become the new logic. The only people that are okay with this are people who are horny and allow their dicks to think for them rather than their brains. And I know this because some people are accepting this and they give no reason. They just like it because, as I said, they think with their dicks nowadays rather than their brains. If you try to bring logic into it, they tell you to piss off. Do you recall in my Ghostbusters review, I said when I reflected on the movie I had good memories and it increased my score to a 9 out of 10? Well, Batman the Killing Joke is still an incredible film and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And when I reflect on this movie, I remember many great scenes. But I also remember this absurd part, and it only makes me hate it even more. It was an insulting disgrace to the Batman lore and characters, and showed that the writers clearly allowed their dicks to dictate this scene, and not characters, logic, or reason. This movie would have gotten a near perfect score, but because of this stupid mindless alteration, my score has gone down to an 8 out of 10, and I was gonna drop it again to a 7. The reason I didn't is because I still loved this movie and I recommend you all see it, but I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they approved that scene. It was disgusting, out of character, and did a complete disservice to them, and to a certain degree, the Killing Joke comic itself. In the end, well done to the art and animation team, well done to Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Tara Strong, great job to the writers, but at the same time, shame on you for allowing your mindless fanfiction dictate your writing decisions. After watching the movie, the scene stands out so much from all the rest, and it doesn't belong. My final message to the writers: I did not think we would get from the wonderful Mask of the Phantasm to this. Do not allow something like this to happen again.